Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and today we're talking about Batman number 98. So, I have talked a lot about the Joker War at this point. It features the same, I believe, art team as always, with Ginny and the Fourth writing, Jimenez and Mori doing the artwork. And on the whole, this was exactly the issue I expected. Last issue, Batman got drugged pretty hard by the Joker gas, and Harley Quinn gave some tea to sort of flush it out of his system, but that just made it really hit him hard. And naturally, he had a lot of hallucinations to deal with, and that's pretty much what Batman's doing in this book. But the rest of the story is devoted to Harley Quinn and Punchline going up against each other. That kind of elaborates on Punchline's character a little bit more. In some ways, making her more like Harley Quinn, which I think is a shame, but she is still a distinct character. She and Clown Hunter remain what appears to be pretty valuable additions to the overall world of Batman, in my opinion, at least what we've seen of them so far. And it's a pretty fun issue overall, with some fun little moments of artwork and interesting bits of potential content going forward. Let's get into what happens a bit. We open on Riddler and Scarecrow playing a chess game, and it's revealed that it's part of some bet that the Penguin has going on at this little hideaway he's created for a bunch of villains. Catwoman is there. She has returned back to the city, and she's kind of rooting for Batman, but sort of sitting this one out. She feels very guilty about giving Joker the money to fund this crazy war. But we then cut to Batman hallucinating Alfred while Harley Quinn is approached by Punchline, and that kind of begins the main thrust of this content. Batman spends a lot of time talking with Alfred about like the Joker and why Batman needs to fight him. Pretty standard stuff. Hello, Artoria. Thanks for joining us for this stream. Meanwhile, the battle between Harley Quinn and Punchline quickly gets out of control because she came fully with the intent of just burning down the whole garden and is using a flamethrower, so everything quickly gets on fire. It's pretty clear that from this issue, Punchline is kind of deluded in a similar way to Harley Quinn, but she sees something different in the Joker, though it is similarly false, and she overvalues herself. There's some cool flashes to existing pieces of Harley Quinn art and moments throughout her history as their battle rages on, and some cool flashes to the Joker 80th anniversary that sort of set up how Punchline became who she is. And it does maintain some differences that I had picked up on between these characters. Punchline feels a lot more aggressive and methodical compared to Quinn. She seems less in love with the Joker and more viewing herself as his ally, but I think she fails to realize how truly disposable she is compared to, or well, really like anyone is to the Joker, except for Batman, and Quinn says as much. There's the Alfred hallucination has a good little moment as Batman kind of flashes back to reality and has a little moment where he takes down Punchline. It's kind of, I like the moment, but I could see someone finding it cheesy where she's like, "That's not possible. You couldn't escape from this gas." And he leaps into the air and he says, and then his cape is framed with the words Batman. To me, it's the sort of creative visual content that you should be doing in comic books. So I like that moment. And with an unconscious Punchline, Batman approaches Harley Quinn. I like their little back and forth across this storyline so far. They're always pretty fun together, especially in this situation where they're kind of working together. Batman pulls out a little battery that'll recharge his suit after it got fried a couple of issues ago, and he calls out to his family. When his computer asks which family members, he says all of them. A fun little moment, and always nice to see Batman pretty consistently these days relying on his allies without making the same mistakes over and over again. Although I don't know how that went down in the Tom King run late in the game. That seems to be the general trajectory and the lessons he should have learned from the Scott Snyder era. Uh, our last page has Catwoman leaving, and she says that she can make the villains a billionaire if they go with her. So, nothing super crazy in this book. Like I said at the beginning of this review, this book was exactly what I expected, but it wasn't a disappointing read. And I think it is a bit of a flaw that it followed along the lines of what I thought it would be to a T. That means it was very predictable, but it wasn't a bad experience. It did all the things I thought it was going to do quite well, and had a few little extra things like the scenes with Catwoman that I didn't expect, and that was quite well done. And the fight between Punchline and Harley Quinn was genuinely appealing. It's nice to just read well-made Batman books, and the previous Tinian arc and this arc are pretty consistently along those lines. I would argue compared to Tom King's run, this is a lot more of an easier, consistent read, even if you can't tell from this review, like, this book didn't blow me away or anything like that. I definitely think out of all the stuff I pulled this week, there's definitely stronger books we've talked about so far and will be going forward. But it wasn't bad, and it was a perfectly fine experience in and of itself, and the artwork's just really good. And that's where, like, Quinn and Punchline's big fight really works, because it just is so well colored, and the background, which starts out as this peaceful, serene garden, just so quickly gets embroiled in flame and chaos. Plus, the use of flashing back to past little bits of artwork. I don't know if they like put that in or recreated it. It's a little hard to tell, but that's how nicely integrated it is. Overall, it's a pretty solid book and a pretty solid little piece of Batman artwork. And I kind of like that this is the story arc that's leading into the 100th issue of the Batman post-Rebirth era series. That feels about right, and I'm kind of glad that's ultimately not what we got out of the Tom King run instead, since that kind of got derailed into the world of Catwoman. I think, based on what we're getting here, that was ultimately the right decision. Thanks for joining us, Raphael. Always good to see you. But yeah, it's a pretty effective book on the whole, and I think I would recommend it, all things considered. While not the best Batman book in the world, maybe not even the best Batman book to come out this week, I quite like it. And a big selling point for me of this Joker Wars storyline is Clown Hunter and Punchline themselves. So for her to be a big part of this book is part of why I like it so much. And her getting taken down by Batman was a cool little moment. She really feels like a worthy addition to Batman's Rogues Gallery, which I think could use this sort of expansion. I talked about how we don't really have a ruthless female quite like Punchline in Batman's roster of foes. And everything I've seen about Punchline since I've said that just reinforces that belief. I think she's pretty great, pretty distinct from Harley Quinn, even if she is fairly Joker, well, heavily Joker themed. I think she's a worthy addition because Harley Quinn is so far from the Joker at this point. It's nice to have that sort of figure around again. Meanwhile, Clown Hunter is insane, and I am looking forward to seeing more of him, which hopefully we will in issue 99. I don't, what does it say the next book's going to be about? I assume clearly we're going to see, the final signal is what they say the next thing is going to be called. Whatever the case, I think it'll probably be a pretty little bit of entertaining content. Raphael asked an interesting question. Is this before or after Three Jokers? Well, it's always a bit of an ambiguous thing, placing these things in a timeline. I think it is to a degree what you make of it, but I also think there is a lot of compelling evidence that Three Jokers isn't necessarily in continuity. This, I believe, pretty clearly works in at some point before the events of Death Metal, kind of like the Justice League books, which we'll talk about next, actually. But I don't believe that Three Jokers is necessarily in continuity. Or if it does, it's going to be hard to reconcile these two stories. Um, because I don't know. They don't work well together. And I talked about that quite a bit in my Three Jokers review. I think it was a true blunder of DC to publish these books at the same time because it confuses that when it didn't necessarily have to be confused. It is possible one of these, or like, yeah, one of the three Jokers is one of the Jokers in this story. And it might kind of fit with the overall themes of the Joker War, but that has been not made clear so far by Three Jokers or anything I've read online. I haven't specifically looked this matter up, so maybe there's something I don't know. If so, feel free to say as much in chat right now or leave a comment section below if you're watching this video later. But with all that being said, I think we'll leave that review there because I still have so much more time to talk about the Joker War going forward. Raphael says, so 4 Jokers, haha. And he wrote the comment, haha. I was not mocking your comment. I kind of laughed at it. Kind of. And you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's technically way more Jokers than that. Batman and Jonah Hex recently battled a Joker dragon in death metal, so it's all kind of whatever, as long as they're just interested in exploring ideas. But it seems like the whole Three Jokers thing not being in continuity, which a lot of evidence is pushing towards, is really bothering people. And I don't fault them too much for that, because I'm guessing I'm guessing if people had the choice, they would rather Three Jokers be in canon over a story like this. Personally, I disagree because of the new characters. I'd rather have the new characters being introduced than whatever Jeff Johns is farting around with, to put it politely. But I did mention earlier this week that we will be reviewing a Jeff Johns book that I quite liked, so I shouldn't be too down on Three Jokers when it still has a lot of room to go. I'd like to do stuff going forward. Meanwhile, DC has been kind of teasing some other thing coming up in December, with some sort of winter-themed event of some kind, which is interesting. I don't know what they're planning right now, but December's kind of been important to DC because it's been very unclear where they're going from here, and that's when death metal's going to kind of end, and some big questions are going to start being floated around. Raphael saying, now have all these Jokers versus the Justice League. You're joking, but Raphael is saying, like, yeah, 5 with Batman and Mask. Like a little team of alternate universe Jokers does sound like a pretty fun story for any old group or team or solo series to have as a force to fight against. That sounds like something that would be fun. But they've done so much with the Joker. Why not do a Spider-Verse style story with them? That sounds a lot more creatively ambitious than some of the other stuff we've gotten going on, although I guess that is kind of what Three Jokers is. But it doesn't feel like those Jokers are like that different compared to what we'd be expecting out of Spider-Verse, where it'd be like, I don't know, bring back Atomic Joker from that Infinite Crisis game and weird stuff like that. Or I guess he was kind of used in the Last Night on Earth, but that'd be cool. Raphael says they're better Suicide Squad. See, that'd be cool. That would be like a movie level idea, I feel. Why not? Sounds like it'd be good to me. Anyways, next up we're going to be talking about Justice League, like I said. Their final, we'll say, filler storyline or issue before they get into death metal themselves. And it's an interesting book and also extremely Batman heavy. So we'll talk about that. Raphael is saying, just have an event with all villains, no heroes. Has that been done? I'd say the closest thing would be Forever Evil, which I would say worked quite well. But why not do something like that again? Or even just more villain-themed stories would be great. Like, just having a group of villains going off and doing things. They were kind of playing around with that with like Justice League. I think they kind of wisely kept Legion of Doom being like an only a 1 in 5 back when Scott Snyder was running it, so you would only check in with the Legion of Doom once in a while. But there is a definitely a various fun ways to focus on villains in a storyline, and I think it can be done quite well. Forever Evil was kind of cool like that because the basic premise of it, even if there was some heroes in that story, was that all of the Justice League was gone, so the villains had to take in that role or else lose that world to like alternate dimension invaders. And I think that was cool as hell. I would love to see more of that. I always love seeing villains getting the focus and getting to do something a little different like that. And I think there's a lot of mileage to it. That's part of the strength of Suicide Squad to begin with. But I'm also thinking of things like Secret Six and other storylines along those lines, which can explore such things to great effect. Uh, maybe we can make a new team out of villains. It feels like there's a version of this that can be done where you kind of have like villains that maybe are more neutral, chaotic or something like that, or true neutral. I think to borrow terms from D&D alignment, where they're not specifically super evil, but they're definitely morally ambiguous and certainly not traditional superheroes. I'm thinking like Ra's al Ghul, even someone like the Penguin, more profit motive oriented. I guess Lex Luthor, although he's definitely more of a traditional villain, but get a team together like that and just explore something along those lines. Why not? The thing that I guess what I'm getting at is, and I was talking about December will be interesting for DC, is they've kind of canceled some series and some are ending. I think that's part of the natural life cycle of these comics, but I would really like to see them kind of try out some new things and float around some new series or new teams or new ideas or something like that. And I'm hoping that they do announce something along those lines and maybe broaden their horizons a little bit. It seems like a good time for that, especially when we're in a climate of introducing new characters like in this issue and stuff like that. Plus, that would also be a good opportunity to maybe get some new talent in the mix, especially on the writing side of things, because I think that's part of the problem. Anyways, we got a little off topic there, but a good little discussion on DC. And I'll see you guys next time for Justice League. Thanks to Raphael and Artoria and everyone else for joining us. And we'll see you guys next time here on Comic Island.